She was used to being invisible, just another cleaning lady in the background of the wealthy and powerful. But one night, everything changed. A millionaire's invitation to his glittering gala wasn't an honor. It was a cruel setup meant to humiliate her in front of hundreds. What he didn't know was that she carried more than a mop and bucket. She carried the truth. And when the truth stepped into that ballroom, dressed in elegance and power, it would shatter his world. The question is, how much damage can one night of justice do? Maya had spent years cleaning the halls of power she would never walk as an equal, or so everyone thought. She moved through marble-floored lobbies and gold-trimmed offices, her presence unnoticed by the very people whose messes she erased. To them, she was just the help. But Maya carried herself with quiet dignity, a grace that came from somewhere deeper than her faded uniform. She'd learned early on to survive by staying in the background. Kept her safe, and it kept her secrets safe. Few knew she had once lived a very different life, one connected to the very family whose name was etched on skyscrapers. When the embossed envelope arrived, she almost didn't believe it was real. An invitation to Victor Langston's exclusive gala, champagne, chandeliers, and billion-dollar smiles. To anyone else, it would have been an unimaginable honor. But to Maya, something felt wrong. It wasn't kindness. It was a summons from a man who saw her as entertainment, not a guest. She didn't yet know how cruel his intentions were, or how ready she was to confront them. The night of the gala shimmered with opulence. Strings of crystal lights, the perfume of expensive roses, the hum of laughter that belonged to the untouchable. Maya stood at the entrance, the polished marble reflecting her figure in a gown so elegant it made heads turn. To the unknowing eye, she was just another guest. But among the crowd, Victor Langston's smirk was impossible to miss. He had orchestrated this moment with precision. The staff had been told to let the cleaning lady in, whispering snide jokes as if her presence were a novelty. Some guests glanced at her with polite confusion, others with open disdain. A few masked their laughter behind champagne flutes. Every look was meant to remind her of where they thought she belonged. But Maya didn't flinch. She moved with the same grace she had carried through years of being overlooked. Only now, every step was deliberate. She noticed the side glances, the hushed words. "Isn't that the janitor? What is she doing here?" When Victor approached, his voice carried just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Well, Maya, I'm surprised you had the nerve to show up. I hope you didn't think this was a charity event." The ripple of chuckles that followed was exactly what he wanted. A public humiliation dressed as playful banter. Yet, if Victor had been watching closely, he would have seen the steel in her eyes. Throughout the evening, he paraded her around, introducing her with mocking flourishes, each introduction laced with reminders of her real station. The more he tried to demean her, the more the room began to sense an undercurrent they couldn't quite name. Because Maya was not here to survive the night. She was here to end it. As the speeches began and all eyes turned to the stage, Victor took his place at the podium. It was his moment to shine, to bask in applause. But when the host unexpectedly announced, "And now, a few words from our special guest, Maya Langston," the air shifted. Some laughed at the mistake, assuming it was a joke. But when Maya stepped forward, taking the microphone with the poise of someone born to command a room, the laughter faded. She looked at Victor, then at the crowd. Her voice was calm, steady, yet every word carried the weight of years. "You don't know me, not really, but you should. My name is Maya Langston, and I have something you all need to hear." A murmur rippled through the ballroom. Cameras lifted. Phones recorded. Victor's confident smile twitched, just slightly. What came next would not just ruin his evening, it would destroy everything he had built. The ballroom was silent except for the faint hum of cameras recording. Maya stood tall, the spotlight catching the glint of a gold pendant around her neck. The same pendant her father had given her before his death. She held it up, letting the crowd see. "This," she said, her voice unwavering, "belonged to Robert Langston, my father." Gasps rippled across the room. Victor froze, his confident mask shattering in an instant. For years he had spun the story, an accident, a tragic loss. But Maya's presence tonight, in the very heart of his empire, was about to unravel it all. She opened a leather folder and began to read, her words sharp as glass. Evidence of embezzlement. Witness statements about threats and coercion. And here, she held up a grainy photo. The proof that Victor Langston didn't just steal a fortune, he stole a life. My father's. The room shifted from confusion to horror. Murmurs grew louder. Several guests pulled out their phones to search Victor's name, their faces pale as they read what surfaced. Victor tried to interrupt, stepping toward her, but two uniformed officers emerged from the back of the room. Maya's voice cut through his protests. For years, you hid behind your wealth, your skin, your power, believing no one would listen to the word of a black cleaning woman. But tonight they'll hear me. They'll see me. She looked out over the crowd, her gaze fierce yet calm. This isn't just about money. This is about justice. The officers moved in, reading Victor his rights as the flash of cameras turned the arrest into a public spectacle. Maya didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply stepped aside, letting the truth do what it had been waiting to do for years, stand in the light. And as Victor was led away, the question hung in the air. In a world built to silence her, how did she find the strength to make them listen? In the days that followed, headlines blazed with Victor Langston's downfall. The footage from that night, Maya standing in the spotlight, calm and unshakable, spread across the internet like wildfire. Strangers called her a hero. Activists called her proof. But Maya didn't see herself as either. She saw herself as a daughter who had carried the weight of silence for too long, and finally laid it down. With her rightful share of the Langston fortune and control of the company, she didn't seek revenge. She sought change. The business that once thrived on exploitation was transformed into one that hired from underserved communities, offered scholarships, and funded programs to protect workers from abuse. Her name was no longer whispered in service halls. It was engraved on the building's entrance. But the victory was more than financial. It was the dismantling of a lie that had stood unchallenged for years. That wealth and power could erase the truth, especially when the truth belonged to someone society tried not to see. Maya knew her story wasn't unique. Across the country, countless others still faced the same injustice. Humiliated, silenced, underestimated because of the color of their skin or the work they did. She had won her battle, but the war was far from over. As she stood on the balcony of her new office, looking out over the city skyline, she wondered, how many more voices would it take before justice stopped being the exception and became the rule? And for those watching, the question lingered. If you saw the truth standing in front of you, would you have the courage to believe it? If the story of change and justice touched you, subscribe to the channel for more stories that show the real victory isn't about taking down your enemies, but about building something so strong and inspiring that no one can tear it down. As she stood on the balcony of her new office, looking out over the city skyline, she wondered, how many more voices would it take before justice stopped being the exception and became the rule? And for those watching, the question lingered. If you saw the truth standing in front of you, would you have the courage to believe it? If the story of change and justice touched you, subscribe to the channel for more stories that show the real victory isn't about taking down your enemies, but about building something so strong and inspiring that no one can tear it down.